This is a warning to the guy working out shirtless in my neighborhood park. Not on my watch. To the guy rolling a blunt the size of a submarine sandwich on a bench 6 feet from a playground at noon on a Tuesday. That shit's about to stop. And to the guy on a cracked public tennis court grunting like Pete Sampras while the guy next to him is still figuring out flip-flops don't belong on a tennis court. I don't think so. I walk my dog Holly through the same park multiple times a day. Every single day. For months, I've seen this bullshit up close and looked the other way, repeatedly. Consider those days over. Every park in every major city has one. The guy who decided his workout could not be, under any circumstances, contained in a conventional gym or in his home or anywhere that didn't involve an audience of strangers who didn't ask to be part of his pathetic public display. It's 62 degrees out. There are children on the swings. And this man decided to pop his shirt off and do pull-ups on the same metal bar a 9-year-old was hanging from not 6 minutes ago. There's a gym 2 blocks away where this exact activity is not only welcome, but expected, where equipment exists specifically for it, where the temperature is controlled and nobody's trying to use the slide underneath your laughable little exhibition. But the gym doesn't have a big enough audience, and that defeats their whole point. The Shirtless Park workout isn't about fitness at all. It's about being seen doing fitness. Everyone watching knows the difference, including the 9-year-old who just wants to know when this is going to be over so she can get back on the bar. It seems the only person in a 6-mile radius who doesn't know what this idiot is doing is the idiot himself. I need to talk about pickleball, specifically. I need to talk about the fact that roughly 98% of people currently playing pickleball have never in their life expressed any interest in tennis, badminton, ping pong, or any other sport that involves hitting something over a net with a racket or paddle. These aren't people who discovered a sport they love. These are people who discovered a sport that is currently considered cool and decided they should love it too. Mostly so they can drop it in the first line of their dating profile or find a way to casually mention it in every conversation they have. I can prove this. If these people genuinely had a passion for this type of athletic activity, it would have expressed itself at some point in the previous several decades in the form of playing tennis or ping pong or badminton or literally anything else that requires the same basic skill set. Those sports have existed for a long time. None of these people were playing them. Furthermore, pickleball has been around since 1965, so everyone has had since, essentially, the Beatles to get on board with this hot new sport. Then suddenly in 2026, the most unathletic guy in the office, Heath, is putting together a paddleball league, and like magic, everybody's lining up, paddle in hand. Including the guy I saw walking to a court on a Sunday morning, carrying his paddle in a special little sleeve, a tiny racket in its own tiny protective case, while he let his girlfriend walk their very large dog beside them. I could only suppose he didn't want to risk injuring himself on the way to the big pickle match. Look, I'm someone who gets his eyebrows waxed. I own bracelets. I once owned a rubber shirt, and I tailor my own clothes. I'm not exactly in a position to judge someone's masculinity, but I watched this man strut toward a pickleball court carrying what looked like a single child's tennis racket in a cute little zippered protective sleeve while his girlfriend handled dog duties, and I thought, that's where I draw the line. I knew there was one somewhere, and I finally found it. Speaking of racket sports, there are 2 tennis courts in this park. They're not professional grade. They were clearly added as an afterthought. The surface is uneven, the nets are slightly crooked. A man who's never held a racket before is on one court trying to figure out which end of the racket to hold, while his friend stands on the other side of the net wearing a button-up shirt holding one filthy ball they found in the shrubs next to the courts. And on the other court, there are 2 men who appear to be training for Wimbledon. Full grunt, every swing, topspin, slice, power serves so fierce they probably shouldn't be legally allowed 12 feet from a public walking path. I'm pretty sure I saw a ball boy and a referee on a little podium set up on the side of the net. One of them is wearing what I can only describe as a tennis outfit, kind of coordinated athletic wear that suggests a current sponsorship. Contrast between Court 1 and Court 2 is one of the best things I've witnessed in a public space. And what kills me That court, too, has never once considered that maybe, given the level at which they're competing, a public park with crooked nets and a guy wearing jorts on the adjacent court might not be the appropriate venue for this level of performance. There are tennis clubs built for people like this. They just don't have the same audience as performing your Wimbledon practice next to a guy who just hit himself in the shin with his own racket during his underhand serve. Read the room, guy. Read the room. Let's talk electric scooters. I don't know if your city has these yet, and if they don't, consider yourself lucky. And full disclosure, I ride them myself often, but I'm an adult and I ride them like an adult. Specifically, I need to talk about the children on electric scooters. 12, 13, maybe 15 years old, if I'm being generous, somehow in possession of a credit card. Definitely not in possession of a helmet, a driver's license, or any meaningful understanding of the concept of other people existing in physical space. Last week, one came up behind Holly and me so fast, so silently, that by the time I heard it, he was already well past us. Holly did a full startle jump almost into my arms, like when Scooby-Doo saw a ghost. The kid didn't even look back. 30 miles an hour on a sidewalk, past strollers, elderly people, and gone before anyone could react. Here's what you might not know. Before you rent one of these scooters, you have to complete a brief quiz. One of the questions specifically asks whether you're allowed to ride on a sidewalk. The correct answer is no. You confirm you understand, and then you immediately ride on the sidewalk because the quiz was apparently just a formality, and nobody enforces anything that matters in this city anyway, because they can't. That's entirely a different podcast. But beyond the rental scooters, there's a whole separate category of privately owned electric scooters and bikes that these kids have somehow acquired. Little motocross-looking things that go 50 miles an hour. No plates, no lights, no license required. Music cranking down the middle of streets with actual cars, through intersections, past stop signs, and Holly now flinches at the specific whirling sound they make when approaching from behind. My dog has developed traumatic responses from scooter kids. And I don't know who decided a 12-year-old who can barely handle a bicycle should be handed 100 pounds of steel moving at 30 miles an hour down public streets and sidewalks, having never even been on one. But that meeting apparently happened, and we're all living with the consequences. Then there are cars. You know the ones. The exhaust systems have been specifically modified to be as obnoxious and disruptive as possible. The ones that pop like gunshots when they let off the gas. The ones that sound like thunderstorms moving through a tunnel when they accelerate. The ones that echo between buildings in my neighborhood at 2 a.m. on a Tuesday morning for no reason that benefits anyone, including the person driving. Here's what I've noticed about these cars. When you occasionally catch a glimpse inside, which is tough because the windows are always blacked out, but when the window is down for a moment and you can actually see who's operating these dickmobiles, it's never who you expect. And I'm going to put this very mildly because I know some kids listen. It's always the most unassuming, mild-mannered, could not possibly be less threatening human being you've ever seen in your entire life. Slight, young, still working on growing facial hair. The kind of person you walk past 100 times without noticing. But they've modified their exhaust system to announce their presence to an 8-block radius. And that tells you everything about the driver. The louder the car, the smaller and more insignificant the person is inside of it. The blacked out windows meant to be intimidating are a curtain, because if you could actually see who was in there, the whole ridiculous facade would collapse immediately. There's a man who sits on the same bench near the south end of the park and rolls what I can only describe as a pharmaceutical-grade blunt with the focused precision of someone assembling a scale model in a hobby shop. Methodical, unhurried, completely unbothered by the fact that there are children on the swings right in front of him, electric scooters 6 feet away, and a shirtless man doing pull-ups approximately 8 feet to his left. Now, I understand it's legal to purchase marijuana in this city, and consider yourself lucky if it's not in yours. What is not legal is consuming it in public. That part didn't make the cut when they wrote the law, and yet here we are. What gets me is the confidence, the absolute certainty that nothing is going to happen to these shitbags, that no one is going to say anything, the cops aren't coming, that the scooters will just scoot around it, and the kids' parents will just steer the stroller in a slightly different direction and move on with their day. And you know what? They're right. Nothing does happen. Nobody does say anything, including me. I just walk past with Holly, who has now smelled enough secondhand marijuana smoke on our walks that I'm genuinely concerned she's getting a contact high so often. I'm going to get pulled aside in the next vet visit where they ask me if Holly's been doing all right in school and want to know who she's been hanging out with lately. Well, another vet is in the other room on the phone with Dog Protective Services. Nobody would do this with alcohol. Nobody's sitting on that same bench openly drinking a bottle of vodka with the same relaxed confidence. Nobody's cracking a beer open on the walking path while kids play 10 feet away because they know someone would say something. They know society as a whole would see this as a problem. They know the social contract around that is still intact. But somehow marijuana got a different set of rules. But when you think about it, at least with the vodka, I don't have to participate. If someone's drinking on a bench, it doesn't reach me. I walk past and it's their business. When you light up in a crowded park like some asshole, it becomes everyone's business whether they want it to be or not. I get a headache from that shit. Holly is nose to the ground in the same air, and a jogger running by is breathing it in mid-stride. The kid on the swing is surrounded by it. You've made a unilateral decision that your preference outweighs everyone else's right to exist in a public space. That's called being an inconsiderate dickhead. Nobody does a thing about it. I've walked through this park hundreds of times now, 4 to 6 times a day since I moved to the neighborhood. Through every season, in the rain, in the cold, at 5 a.m. and after midnight when it's just me and Holly and whatever pigeons are awake at that hour. And I've realized that the park is basically an accurate summary of the city itself. The performance, the obliviousness, and right in the middle of it all, there's Holly. Nose to the ground, completely unbothered, hunting squirrels she'll never catch with the same focused intensity every single time. She's figured out something that I haven't. Just keep moving. There's always another squirrel.